Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 7, Hai Mi Ho Bai. As night fell, the ward was pretty quiet. Now and then a dog would bark, but very few houses had their lights on. The Carpiao followed behind him nagging, saying, "I told you to come earlier, but you didn't, and now all the people have left. In this dark night with no lights or fire, we can't even see the plagues over the door, so where are we supposed to go find it?" Hung Jun stood there for a while, until the 3,000 drum beats ended and the city entered true night. He could only press on stubbornly to go knock on doors and ask for directions. After knocking on several doors, he finally crossed paths with a mute old man who lifted his lantern up and waved it in front of Hung Jun's face, so Hung Jun could only thank him for his hospitality and turn around and leave. The alley seemed to almost be part of an old, dilapidated estate, and who knows how many people had come by to Phi exit in recent years, but the inside was overgrown with weeds. Hung Jun just lay down on the ground, uncaring of the dirt, and was so tired that as soon as he laid down, he immediately fell asleep. That night, dark clouds covered the moonlight. In the depths of Xingqing Palace, a dark wind began to blow, uttering the drapes, and the candles were blown to the point of flickering non-stop, creating shifting patches of light and dark. A rich madam wearing a black robe embroidered with a dowdy pattern sat upright in the hall, along with 3 men wearing capes that hid their features. One of them presented a platter, in which lay a throwing knife stained with blood. "What is this?" the wealthy woman asked. When Fei Ao was outside of the city hunting prey, he took a stab from this knife, the man said quietly. "I had it go to Daming Palace for now, to hide and heal its wounds." The wealthy lady's slender hand lifted up that throwing knife, her brows furrowed deeply. After staring at it for a split second, the immortal slaying throwing knife reflected her devastatingly beautiful, dignified face. Never seen it before. She tossed the throwing knife back onto the platter with a light. "Dangling. Someone's coming," another man said. "It's been so many years," the lady said coldly, "and they're only coming just now. Tomorrow I shall bring this throwing knife in front of His Majesty, to see what he says." "What about the wielder of the knife?" "He was chased by Li Jinglong, and the 2 of them fought around," the third man reported. "He disappeared during the chase, however, so perhaps—" "Ha ha ha!" The lady began to laugh freely, and the branches of blossoms quivered. "It's getting interesting. That crazy fool Li Jinglong, is he still caught up in his grand dream of slaying Yao and exterminating Mo?" After the events of last night, Fei Ao carelessly showed itself inside the city, and outside the rumors are already spreading, the man said. "There are Yaoguai in Chang'an." "Oh." The lady smiled. "Chang'an has Yao? This is the first time I'm hearing about it. The saintly Son of Heaven sits on his throne while the 4 seas are at peace and the land is thriving. Where are these Yao coming from? Tomorrow I'll have to sit him down for a proper talk. You all can leave now, and have Fei Ao not reveal himself anymore. Go find the owner of the throwing knife, and after finding him, send him over to Fei Ao as food." In the early autumn morning, the air was a little stifling. After a few bird calls, in an instant, the sound of birds flapping came from the parasol tree outside the dilapidated house before they all flew away. There was a loud crash from the front yard, and that abruptly startled Hung Jun awake from the midst of his dreams. The Carpiao was also jolted awake, frightened half to death. After it scrambled out of the bag, its shy body slapped against the ground with paw 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 as it flopped about and said, "What's happening? What's happening?" Right after, it executed a carp leaping out of the water, and with a flip its 2 feet planted solidly on the ground as it stood. It looked to the left and right as it said, "Where is this? Is anyone there?" That man said, before pushing open the door to the front hall and walking in. Hung Jun immediately lifted his hand to shield his eyes. Backlit by the bright sunlight, he saw a slim, lithe youth about 9 chi tall wearing a strange outfit staring down at him oddly. The 2 of them stared dumbly at each other for a moment, and Hung Jun finally clearly saw the man's face. His facial features were evenly spaced and well-edged, his cheekbones were high, his eyebrows were as dark as hawk feathers, and the curve of his lips was well defined. His skin had been tanned by long years of sun to a healthy bronze, and in his thick black hair were many small braids. He carried a bow and quiver on his back and wore a sheepskin shoulder capelet on one shoulder, revealing his bronzed, muscular right shoulder. He also wore a pair of black hunting boots, and tied around his waist was a travel bag. He looked like a hunter. The man had broad shoulders and a trim waist, and though he was wearing that sheepskin hunting jacket, it didn't detract from his extraordinariness. "Scared this Yao to death," the carp Yao said. The young man saw the carp Yao and suddenly jolted, before reaching back and pulling an arrow out of his quiver, instantly knocking it to his bow and drawing it. Hung Jun immediately shielded the carp Yao. "This Yaogwai doesn't harm people, I'm an exorcist." As he said it, he was afraid of the carp Yao undercutting his words, so he cried, "Zhao Zilong, don't talk nonsense anymore." At this, the youth finally put away his bow, half in disbelief, and he looked at Hung Jun with judgment as he asked, "You're an exorcist? How come you have a Yao with you?" "This, who am I supposed to find to report for duty?" Hung Jun asked, dazed. "Report for duty?" The youth raised his hand and pointed above Hung Jun's head, gesturing at him to look in that direction. Hung Jun lifted his head and looked, only to see that there was a plaque nailed over the doorway of the front hall, and it had 5 large words written on it, "The Great Tang Exorcism Department." In the Xingqing Palace Gardens, the sky outside the walls was covered with gloomy clouds, and it was stiflingly hot beyond compare. Li Longji hugged Yang Yahuan without caring for the heat, and as soon as they separated, he wanted to press back against her again. After sticking together for a while, the two of them were covered with sweat, and as they drank their chilled sour plum drink, they could only hook their fingers together. Lady Qiaoqiao sat to one side peeling lychees, and as soon as they were peeled, she placed them into a 5-colored glass bowl chilled with ice cubes, and Yang Qiaoshong sat beside her picking out the peeled lychees to eat. That Longwu army captain Li Jinglong, all he did was patrol the city at night and take the opportunity to go to the brothel. Then his subordinates got drunk and started fighting and making a fuss, and the next day when they woke up, they realized that they couldn't clean it up, so they came up with this kind of absurd joke, Yang Qiaoshong said gleefully. "This person must be gotten rid of," Lady Qiaoqiao said. "Not under strict control, forgetful of one's duties, lying to the emperor, and spreading false rumors, how can we let this go?" Yang Yahuan suddenly thought of something and asked, "Isn't Li Jinglong General Feng's cousin?" "It's exactly him," Yang Qiaoshong said. Some time ago Chongqing returned to court and handed up a document regarding his younger cousin. He wanted to take him out with him on a campaign to make some war contributions. The way I see it, he's just bored right now. If we send him out and have him fight for a few years, naturally he won't cause any more problems. Li Longji ended once, but just as he was about to open his mouth, Yang Yahuan looked at the other's expressions, but in the end her conscience wouldn't let her keep silent, and she said, "General Feng just made a major war contribution to the country, so sending his cousin out just like this, at the bottom of it, young people's blood run hot, it's no big crime." Back in the day when Duke De grew old and muddle-headed, he kept going on about how there were Yao. Li Longji recalled this, and continued, "Back then he even came up with a department, called the Exorcism Department. It was under the direct control of the Peace and Order Department, and after the capital was moved, it was also brought over as well." Yang Yahuan answered, "I seem to remember when I was small. I just knew that you would want to talk about that white fox again." Lady Qiaoqiao smiled lightly. Li Longji said, "Speaking of this, when I was small when they went to offer sacrifices to the gods, I saw the shape of a black dragon in the Luo River." Yang Yahuan smiled. "That was a blessed omen. It's just that the common people didn't know how it was a miracle, so they called it a Yao. An auspicious sign, and didn't it perfectly provide evidence for your Majesty's destiny?" "Indeed, Li Longji answered. N. Zhen suddenly had a thought, since that Li Jinglong has such strange thoughts and wondrous skills, what about setting him to run the exorcism department? How about that? Yang Qiuzhong, Yang Yehuan, and Lady Qiuo all froze for a moment, before Yang Yehuan began to smile. The corner of Lady Qiuo's mouth trembled gently, and for a while she didn't know how to respond. Li Longji then said with a perfectly serious expression, then it will be like this, though it is unknown where the exorcism department is, it must still exist. After all, this person does not seem to be able to stay within the Longwu army. Send him to watch the exorcism department for a while, and spread the word of the auspicious sign to the citizens of Chang'an, so that Feng Changqing's wish can also be granted. These matters will be left to you to take care of, Qiuzhong. Yang Qiuzhong. Within the dilapidated estate, Hung Jun and that handsome youth kept watching each other, neither of them had thought that this would be the place. But this place had clearly been left to rot for many years. The front hall was clogged with spider webs, though as they went in and out, they realized that the rooms inside were still pretty large. After passing through the front hall, there was an expansive courtyard in which were several rotted chests, all wholly empty inside. The youth's name was Mo Rijin, and he was from the Shiwei tribe. He had actually come to report to be an exorcist as well, and he had asked for Hung Jun's letter and was currently intently studying it outside. On the two letters, both contained the same general contents: the monsters of Chang'an were overrunning the place, and the descendants of exorcist families far and wide were asked to report into the Chang'an Great Tang Exorcism Department for duty. While Mo Rijin was looking at the letters, Hung Jun strolled around in the disused exorcism department. He saw that within the courtyard there was a parasol tree that stood taller than the eaves of the roof, and several seeds had fallen to the ground around the base. As Hung Jun looked at that parasol tree, he was filled with a sense of closeness. The courtyard was connected to the eastern and western wings by two hallways, and on the hallways there hung wind chimes that tinkled gently. At the end, though there was a false wall, the doors and windows were all rotted away in the 12 rooms, and mice darted in and out, making hizzy noises. In the innermost chambers, there was an expansive, broad hall which was the main hall. Inside said hall were several large, comfortable couches made from bamboo, and in the middle of that arrangement was a central coffee table. The days had been long, and everything was already broken, and there were even a few broken ceramic shards underneath that wooden table. In the backyard there was a stable for the horses, as well as a back door that had been sealed shut. Kong Hung Jun. Mo Rijin finished reading the letter in the front hall, and he quickly walked over, his head almost smacking into the doorway as he said, "Our two letters are the same." Hung Jun said, "Then this is strange." In his imagination, the Great Tang Exorcism Department should be a place where there were people, but even if this wasn't like the government estates of legend, it would at least still look like a way stop. But now, this place was completely empty, without a soul in sight. So who had sent this letter out? Before he went down the mountain, Qing Xiang hadn't told him where the letter came from, and he had never mentioned what lineage Hung Jun had come from. But seeing this, it was as if someone had copied the letters and sealed and sent them, and the signature on the letter was the character D. "Is the sender Di Renjia?" Mo Rijin said, "Hasn't he been dead for many years? You guys, take a look at the wall." The Carpiao stood within the main hall, and it tilted its head as it spoke. "Hung Jun, Yi." Hung Jun went up to wipe away the dust on the wall, revealing a mural that showed a seated official wearing purple robes. In front of it was an incense burner covered with a patna. "This is probably him, Hui," Mo Rijin said. "Could the exorcism department have moved?" Hung Jun asked. "The place the letter specified was here," Mo Rijin said. "As you can see, it's been abandoned for many years, so it's not like they moved recently." The two of them stood in front of the mural for a while. Hung Jun felt as if he had fought his way through messes of brambles, climbed mountains, and forded rivers to come to the end of his 1,000-mile journey, only to find that what he expected was completely different from what he got. He had the strange feeling of disappointment that accompanied climbing a mountain for a good part of a day before finding out that there was nothing special at the peak. At this moment, a human voice suddenly came from the front courtyard. "Oh," the door fell in. "Is anyone there?" A Hu youth wearing a lavish, dark red warrior's robe, carrying a lute on his back, stood within the courtyard. He was currently pulling out some money to pay the two porters who carried large and small packages, filling the courtyard with luggage. That youth had a high nose bridge, deep-set eyes, a head of curly hair, and he wore 4 rings on his hand. His skin was as white as milk, and in his hand he shook open a fan the color of a blue gem, holding it over his head to block the sun as he looked left and right, his expression one of confusion. Mo Rijin and Hung Jun came out from the front hall. "Hi yo!" The Hu youth shouted loudly, greatly startling the two of them. "Hi mi ho bai dash!" The Hu youth spread his arms wide and shouted warmly, "My dear great Tang friends! Hello dash!" Right after that, the youth swiftly came up to the two of them, first hugging Mo Rijin before tightly hugging Hung Jun. "I am Talapatamia Hamaha Kamarabi," that Hu youth said. "You can call me A Tai." That Hu youth called A Tai finished making his introductions and placed his 2 hands in front of his chest as he slowly backed off, gracefully and easily sinking into a bow before saying, "If I may, is this the Great Tang Exorcism Department? This is my letter of recommendation. Who is the official in charge?" Mo Rijin and Hung Jun went speechless at the same time, but before they could ask their questions, someone else came in. "Is anyone there?" The 3 of them turned their heads at the same time, only to see another person, a tall scholar, stick his head in from outside to peek around. "This one is called Chu Yangzi, a personage from Jiangnan," the scholar greeted them and smiled. "My grandfather sent me here, specially to, what's wrong? Why are your expressions all this level of strange? Yi? Why is there a Yaogwai in the department?" 1K later, each of them held a letter in their hand, looking at each other. "This isn't right. Did you all come to report for duty? Is the judiciary department in charge?" The Shiwei person, Mo Rijin, asked. The scholar Chu Yangxi said, "Before I came here, I first went to the judiciary department. They're not in charge." The Hui Tai said, "When I went by the rights department, they also told me they aren't in charge." The 4 of them sat around in a circle as they all sank into thought. The 4 of them had all received the letter telling them to report for duty, but what they arrived to was an exorcism department devoid of any trace of human habitation, overgrown with weeds and wild shrubs. What exactly was going on here? "I think there is one point that is very suspicious." A Tai snapped his fingers and paced within the hall, looking at Mo Rijin as he said thoughtfully, "I'm from Tokaristan, this brother Mo Rijin is from the Great Siwai grasslands, this beautiful brother. I'm called Hung Jun, Kong Hung Jun," Hung Jun said. "Where do you live?" A Tai asked as he grinned. "Mount Taihang. How about you?" A Tai asked that scholar named Chu Yangxi. "Zihu," Chu Yangxi responded. A Tai said, "We have come from both near and far, and we all received our letters at different times, so how did we end up arriving in Chang'an on the exact same day?" "You're right!" Hung Jun exclaimed. "Oh!" Chu Yangxi asked, "You guys also just got here?" Mo Rijin nodded slightly, as if he was thinking something over. "As long as we find the person who sent the letters, then we should be able to understand the truth." Hung Jun thought that if this person had managed to pass a letter into Qing Xiang's hand, then wouldn't that mean that he knew Hung Jun was in Yaojin Palace? And if he knew, then perhaps he knew Di Renjia and his dad Kong Xian as well? At least, would the letter writer know about the events of the past? Hung Jun hesitated for a second, before he came up with a brilliant thought. "Do you guys think that there will be more people coming in a bit?" A Tai nodded, and a wry small smile lifted the corner of his mouth. "Exactly, so what we should do, is possibly just wait. End chapter. Legend of Exorcism. Chapter 8, The Exorcist's Superior Officer. That afternoon, the chilly rain pitter-pattered on the roof tiles as the four of them, filled with confusion, sat under the eaves watching the rain. My grandfather told me to come to Chang'an to defeat Yao. Chu Yangxi had a completely innocent baby face and continued, "It's mostly so that I can gain some courage. Brothers, my education was not thorough. When you guys fight the demons, please do give this little brother a lot of guidance." Hung Jun said, "I'm also not very well versed in these matters." As for the two of them, what is your weapon? Origin asked A Tai. "I see you have a fan, you must be quite proficient in wielding it." "I haven't revealed my greatest magical artifact yet," A Tai smiled and said. "There's no harm in telling you, dear friends. It's this lute." After he finished speaking, A Tai pulled out the barbet lute he carried on his back. Hung Jun had been very interested in artifacts since he was young, but at first he hadn't known A Tai well, so it was awkward to ask him questions. Now that they were a little more familiar, he gently touched it and asked, "This lute?" "Yes." A Tai nodded and smiled. "This lute was passed down to me by my now deceased father. When the Yaogwai appear, all I have to do is pull out this lute, and use this to attack the enemy." Hung Jun said, "What piece would you play then?" "No," A Tai shook his head and said, "I'd lift it up and smash it down on their heads." Hung Jun. A Tai earnestly continued, "This lute is as light as the feather of a hong in my hand, but when it smashes down, it's as heavy as Mt. Tai. Even if the opponent is a dragon, it can be clobbered to death in one blow." "Don't say any more." Hung Jun cradled his forehead in one hand and pushed away A Tai's head that had moved over. "Beautiful little brother," A Tai scooted over, looking into Hung Jun's eyes. A Tai's own were as blue as the ocean, and combined with his smile, made it impossible to refuse him. "What troubles your heart so? What sorrows do you carry?" A Tai asked tenderly. "Why is your forehead always furrowed? Life is so wonderful, how about I play a song for you to listen to, all right?" Origin finally couldn't stand listening to it any longer. He slung one arm across Hung Jun's shoulders and used his arm to block A Tai. "Don't bully him, he doesn't understand anything." Hung Jun was indeed very frustrated. Even though he had made several new friends, the heart lamp was gone, his throwing knives had disappeared, and he didn't see a way to go about fixing this entire mess. Originally he had thought that he would first come to the exorcism department and begin by exterminating some Yao before thinking of ways to start searching, but now the future was shrouded in fog. Hung Jun said, "I do have some troubles." "What troubles?" Origin asked. "If you tell us, we can try to help you." "Does it have to do with Yaogwai?" "Yaogwai?" Chu Yangxi, in that moment, sat up straight and said, "Really? Chang'an has Yaogwai?" A Tai said, "Being able to devote my strength to your cause is my greatest honor." Chu Yangxi was a little frightened, so he said, "As long as you don't stick too close, I can help you with anything else." "I do have to get braver. Tell us, what kind of Yaogwai is it? I'll think of some other methods." Hung Jun was very moved, and said, "If it's really impossible for me, then I'll tell you guys." "Good choice." Origin smiled. "Relying on oneself is better than relying on the heavens or the earth. You can do it." Saying that, he patted Hung Jun's shoulder. The rain gradually stopped, and A Tai spoke again, "Such a lovely scene shouldn't be wasted. How about a spirited piece to accompany it? Let's first clean this place up and get some rooms set up." Origin pushed up on his knee as he rose to stand. "We'll probably have to sleep here tonight." "Let's sleep in a Chang'an inn," A Tai said. "Let's go." "My treat." "I think I'll sleep here," Hung Jun said. "Zhao Zilong's fish stink is too strong, and he could frighten somebody if we were to stay in an inn." He didn't know why, but he had started to like this place. After the long, meandering journey here. When he saw that tall parasol tree planted in the middle of that courtyard, he felt that it was a little familiar. Origin was not picky about such things, so he chose to stay with Hung Jun. Chu Yongxi thought about it for a while before choosing to join the other two, and finally A Tai changed his mind as well and decided to stay in this dilapidated exorcism department. At twilight, the city of Chang'an was lit with the red rays of the sunset. It had rained for 3 days straight, and autumn had officially swept over Guangzhou. Feng Chongqing held his cane in his left hand and the imperial edict for Li Jinglong in his right, and step by step, the two of them walked out from the Longwu barracks. Li Jinglong was tall and well-built, and under his right arm he carried a roll of bedding. Originally, he planned to have one of the household servants carry it back, but Feng Chongqing insisted he hold onto it as he led Li Jinglong from the main gate of the Longwu army's headquarters all the way home, thus drawing the attention of the citizens on the streets of Chang'an. After receiving word of his change in post, Li Jinglong had packed his bedding to return home. He was tired of this constant torment, which only continued as all the citizens that had gathered along the streets laughed at his plight. This prodigal son had been kicked out of the Longwu army again. Hey, you're being reassigned to the Great Tang Exorcism Department. Feng Chongqing firmly held the imperial edict, limping along in front, and it wasn't clear if he was speaking to Li Jinglong or himself as he said, "This is a matter of much celebration. The Chancellor of the Right personally commanded that you be promoted 2 levels in a single night." Li Jinglong said quietly, "I'm not walking forward like this anymore." The citizens who were passing by pointed and whispered, as if Li Jinglong couldn't feel their gazes on his back. Feng Chongqing turned around and used the cane to hit him, angrily shouting, "When you ran out from Pingkong Li, why weren't you afraid of losing face while wandering on the street?" Li Jinglong really wanted to throw the bedding down angrily on the ground and storm away, but filial piety was the foundation of humanity. Li Jinglong's parents had passed away when he was young, and though Feng Chongqing was only his cousin, he had time and again supported him through the years. If he disobeyed his elder brother, he would never be able to lift his head to anyone ever again, so he gritted his teeth and bore the harsh words. "Whose reputation was affected by you parading through the streets?" Feng Chongqing lamented. "My reputation would be affected. This little old me." Li Jinglong followed behind Feng Chongqing as he quietly spoke, "Had they died in those early days, who would have known the authenticity of their lives? Sooner or later, there will be a day where the truth will come out. Since you don't believe me, then why do you need to criticize me in front of all these people? You already know in your heart if I've ever lied to you or not." Feng Chongqing said, "Then why don't you let His Majesty discern the truth for himself? Where are the Yao you speak of? Go ahead and find that person from that night, drag them out in front of the court and interrogate them for a round. Why don't you go find them for me?" Li Jinglong was so angry that he trembled all over, and at the entrance to the alleyway, he lowly said, "One day, you will see." Feng Chongqing didn't respond. The two of them had passed through a little less than half of Chang'an, since Feng Chongqing had specially taken him on a detour through the western market. When they entered an alley, Li Jinglong held his bedding roll in one hand and turned to walk towards the other end of the alley. Feng Chongqing straightened up and asked, "Where are you going?" Li Jinglong didn't respond, only quickening his steps. He didn't want to return to Feng Chongqing's home if it would only result in ceaseless arguments. Feng Chongqing could only limp along with his cane, slowly trying to catch up with Li Jinglong, who walked silently and steadily forward down the alley. From the depths of the alley came the crisp sounds of music and the sounds of people singing. The sunset dyed the cobblestones red, casting Li Jinglong's shadow on the ground. The autumn wind blew by, and the scene carried an aura of bleakness. "Where are you going?" Feng Chongqing asked persistently. Li Jinglong's expression was blank as he wordlessly continued onward. He walked to the end of the alley and pushed the broken-down doors, and the left-hand door fell inwards with a sky-shaking thud. Pang! The fallen door made a huge bang, revealing the scene within the courtyard. In the courtyard, the music abruptly stopped as everyone froze, all of them turning to stare at Li Jinglong. Within the courtyard of the exorcism department, A Tai was strumming the barbet lute, Hung Jun was hitting a small chipped bowl with a pair of chopsticks, Chu Yangxi was holding 2 sticks of bamboo and hitting them doo-doo against a rock, and Mo Rijin plucked at his bowstring in time with the rhythm. They were arranged in a circle around a wooden tub half filled with water. A carp with 2 arms and 2 legs stood inside, 1 foot up on the edge of the tub, his hands waving back and forth as he danced. When the door fell, 4 men and 1 fish all froze at the same time, staring in confusion at Li Jinglong and Feng Chongqing behind him. Li Jinglong. Everything was due to fate, nothing was under the control of humans. Li Jinglong was yet unaware that in this life, there were many strange forces at play that were in the midst of toying with him. It was as if everything he had experienced over the past 20 years was all for this day, so that he would unexpectedly and seemingly coincidentally push open the door in front of him. As if driven by fate, from that first hasty glance until the moment he met the gaze of that beautiful youth, in his vision, everything else in the world fell away, leaving behind only that countenance that he could never forget. If life were nothing but a series of beautiful first impressions, how ordinary that moment was to the us of the time. Countless emotions converged in his heart like the waves crashing against each other in stormy seas, and with a force that could bring the sky down, they instantly collapsed the inhibitions of his reason. And many thousands of words were distilled into 4 simple ones. "Return me my innocence." Li Jinglong angrily roared, pulling out his sword. His body turned into a swift shadow as he shot towards Hung Jun. In that same moment, when Hung Jun saw the sword being unsheathed, he immediately took a step back, then jumped up. When his body was already in midair, the rest of them finally reacted. "Have mercy!" Mo Rijin shouted. "Friends! Don't make a fuss over nothing!" A Tai shouted. Chu Yangxi shouted, "Don't be afraid!" And yet Li Jinglong's target was not the carp Yao, his sword was instead aimed directly for Hung Jun. In a flash, the 3 bystanders suddenly felt a wave of killing intent, and sensing that things were going badly, they moved to protect Hung Jun. A Tai waved his fan, Mo Rijin moved his body in front to block the blow, and Chu Yangxi abruptly pulled out his sword as the 3 of them simultaneously tried to block Li Jinglong, but Li Jinglong had already crossed the front courtyard, darting in front of Hung Jun. "He's a normal person!" Hung Jun shouted. "Go easy on him!" Hung Jun felt some trepidation towards the sword in Li Jinglong's hand. That night, it was exactly because he had been careless that the pentacolor sacred light had been disabled. Since then, he had replayed that scene in his head countless times, so obviously he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. He held a throwing knife in each hand, and with his body in the air, he brought the 2 knives down on that pitch-black sword. In the moment where the throwing knives landed on the rusty sword, the 2 magical weapons met and let out a spiritual resonance. Li Jinglong's pupils suddenly contracted, and just as he was about to switch forms, Hung Jun's not quite 7 kun long throwing knives came down in the 4 ounces yields 1,000 caddies move, locking down the blade of the sword and twisting it. That move twisted the iron sword in his hand, and the fleshy bit of Li Jinglong's hand between the thumb and the index burned as the sword spun and left his hand. Mo Rijin, A Tai, and Chu Yangxi simultaneously cheered as Hung Jun flipped and landed on the ground. They followed up with their own moves, and without Hung Jun clearly seeing the situation, they landed 3 solid hits on Li Jinglong's shoulders, sending him flying outwards. Despite being told to go easy, whether everyone couldn't pull back in time, or if they went all out anyways. Li Jinglong crashed into the front hall, his head smacking. The door opened, and with a hwala sound, he flew out into the middle courtyard, crashed into the ground, and fell unconscious. Hung Jun furrowed his brows. His finger had been nicked by the blade of the sword, and both of his hands were covered with blood. The others hurried to take a look, and Mo Rijin frowned. "Are you hurt? What grudge does this person have against you?" That carp Yao looked left and right, and his eyes landed directly on Feng Chongqing outside the door. Feng Chongqing opened his mouth. He had not yet recovered from the shock, so he kept retreating backwards. The Carpiao loudly shouted, "There's still one more, don't let him escape." A Tai and Chu Yangxi immediately turned back. Chu Yangxi grasped his sword in his right hand and rushed up, just as Feng Chongqing loudly shouted, "Yao, Yao, Yaogwai." With one foot, Chu Yangxi stepped on Feng Chongqing's chest, pointing his sword at his throat. A Tai took this chance to toss out 2 lengths of rope, which rushed along the ground to Feng Chongqing, tightly binding his arms and legs together. In the span of a stick of incense, Hung Jun's hands had been bandaged, while the brothers, Li Jinglong and Feng Chongqing, had been thrown in the corner of the main hall, both of them deeply unconscious. "He's called Li Jinglong, he's a common guard. That day I was chasing a Yaogwai outside of the city of Chang'an." Hung Jun started from the beginning and narrated the events to the 3 people in the courtyard. When he reached the point in his story about the heart lamp, the Carpiao who had been listening off to the side let out a dry cough, and Hung Jun knew that he shouldn't speak more of it. He hesitated for a moment before skipping that section entirely, and once he finished, his listeners' faces bore expressions of surprise. "A series of misunderstandings," Mo-Rijin said. "This person thought you were a Yaogwai, so he came at you with the intent to kill. Thankfully you didn't get seriously injured." Mo-Rijin was just about to go up and untie Li Jinglong's bindings, but the Carpiao pulled out a roll of something and tapped it against Hung Jun's knee. "What is this?" Hung Jun wondered. The Carpiao responded, "They dropped this outside." Chu Yangxi took it, and after opening, realized that it was an imperial edict, and began to read. "Dear official, the sacred Son of Heaven sits on the throne and sees all in his auspicious glory. Duke De carried out the Emperor's wishes by creating the Great Tang Exorcism Department, and today we decree that Li Jinglong of the Longwu Military Academy is to take on the position of the XXX Exorcism Department ZHZH. The ones who were crowded around the edict looked up at the same time and gazed at the unconscious Li Jinglong in the hall. Then they all simultaneously lowered their heads, staring at the edict. The hand that Chu Yangxi was holding the edict with was shaking uncontrollably, and the corners of his mouth were trembling. End chapter.